There we go.
You're becoming a pro at this.
Yeah, if you say so.
I'm still struck by how often. So I have lots of Zoom calls in a given week, and it's after 4 years of doing this, still, kind of making ham-fisted mistakes, launching into something on mute and all of the things that happen.
Yeah, I probably already told this story enough, but when they first started with the COVID stuff, and everybody was doing at work stuff, I thought the whole internet would crash
hmm
because everybody was starting to use it, but it worked pretty well.
Had this pandemic happened 10 years ago, it would have been really hard in most post-secondary to manage what we did. But,
Yeah.
the change protocols, the development of some of these tools made it, now we actually managed through it.
Yeah, the only real issue I have with it is that you don't have this exact same dialogue you get,
No,
especially when you have more than two people. You
that's
sort
true.
of talk over each other, and it's just a little bit still stiff, but it still works very well.
Indeed.
So you were in Seattle, is that right?
Yeah, went down to Seattle for a family memorial, and then in the course of it, I had a opportunity. They have a light rail now that you can just kind of airlift right down to an old part of the city. And in the last few times I've been going there, I launched down to International Village, and then just kind of walk my way back through Pioneer Square, Pike Place Market, that whole area. And depending on my stamina, I sometimes will hop on the train and go to another Capitol Hill. And photographically, all those areas are really quite fun.
Yeah, a little light rail, like anywhere, like subways, like in Metro in Paris or like the Underground in London. That's great. They were going to have light rail from Boulder to Denver and around
Mhm.
through that, but they decided not to do that. They just had express lanes and bus lanes and things like that. So
Yeah, no, it's just nice because it's easy to get to interesting parts of the city and actually, funnily, like here in Vancouver. Hey there, John.
Good evening.
hang on.
Evening to you. Here in Vancouver, doing a similar kind of thing, but I've been hopping in neighborhoods on little rental scooters. So you just go down the
Yeah,
street and pick one up, pop to a neighborhood, and off you go. So it's been fun.
yeah. I think I mentioned that before. The scooter. You had the Lime, and then there's Bird.
Yeah, yeah, we're Lime over here.
Yeah, and you see that all over Europe as well. And this, like up in Indianapolis in the evenings and the summers, you have what they think called the Canal Walk, and
hmm
around the Monument Circle, the people, it's just like beautiful evenings, and you can ride these scooters around all over the place. It's just gorgeous. I know there in Amsterdam, though, you got a river of bicycles.
A lot of bicycles, yes.
Yeah. So I'm
Yeah.
wondering how do you see
No,
many scooters there? Electric scooters?
yes, a lot of that. I don't know how you call it in English. The people of 16, 17, they have uh, bicycles with big tires.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, and they're going a little bit more fast than normal bicycles.
And they're absolutely quiet too, just like
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's everybody has of that age has a thing like that.
yeah, they have skateboard versions here too. So you get and the single wheels. So you
Yeah.
get those guys on the helmets kind of leaning forward, going, a fair clip. And then you got the skateboards, electric skateboards, and then you got the scooters. So yeah, it's becoming quite a thing.
But about the bicycles, everybody in Holland has a bicycle.
Yeah.
Oh, and there are more bicycles than people.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to watch it too.
And there's a saying here. Well, if you don't have you have a bicycle, then you lend one from another. Not stealing. It's just you lend one.
Nice.
But now it's different because of everybody has an electric bicycle, huh? And
Yeah.
then they are more careful and they are stealing a lot these bicycles.
Yeah, they can be expensive. Well,
Yeah.
I can easily see that. I mean, like in like in Amsterdam, you just don't have the traffic's. There's no place to park, for one thing,
Yeah.
and the streets are narrow and so forth. So yeah, that makes a lot more sense. I mean, there are some bicycle-friendly towns like Bloomington here, and with the Indiana University is there, and Boulder, Colorado is, but still, it's just mostly cars everywhere.
I like to photograph bicycles. I don't know why, but
I was reading an article on panning the other day, and so ever since I've been out trying to pan, catching different uh,
Mhm.
speeds of people running, people walking, people
yeah,
in and skateboards, and
I
so I was
like uh, I like zebras as well.
mm, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, bicycling, trying to learn how to pan with a bicycle is a good way to do that, especially with a lot of bicycles around.
Yeah,
Really get your act down on it, so you know
yeah,
what you're
or
doing.
just a slow shutter speed, eh?
Mhm.
Yeah. So, what did I
How is
have?
everything going? I was in Greece, in Zakynthos.
Oh,
You were in
wonderful.
Greece?
Yeah.
Wow. We were supposed to go to Greece back, then the pandemic hit, so we had to cancel our trip.
Mhm. I was yeah, in a not so big island, Zakynthos, but it's very touristic.
I was in what we were going to be in a cruise up through, what was it, Croatia or something? And I was going to pose a picture. I don't know if you recognize this character
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
from Jason and the Argonauts. So I was going to pose a picture of that, but the Straits of Hercules or something like that. So it looks like I could actually take a picture of that as a fun thing to post on Facebook.
Harryhausen moment for you.
Yeah, Ray Harryhausen. Yeah, Jason and the Argonauts. So I had. Oh yeah, I was going to talk to you about Jeff, your photo with the black and white photo.
Hmm.
I thought
With
it was an excellent photo. I mean,
well, thank you.
there when you first look at it, it's like, "Well, yeah," but it sort of unfolds as you look at it more.
Is
And
it Crocs?
and the let me go. I think what we keep talking about these photographs, but I probably ought to just pull them up as we
Well,
do
it was
it.
fun. So last night, I was out with my friend Guy. So it wasn't Guy on the viaduct; it was my friend Guy on the viaduct, and we were very close to the same place in the city. And I was gonna try to take another version of that shot from a different angle with the stadium. And he was trying to stop me from taking the shot, kind of dancing around. But then we walked across the street, and I got it anyways. But in any case, he is a very magnetic personality and a fun person to go out with. So yeah, he was my street subject.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and pop this open then. Desktop two. Can
Oh,
you
yeah,
see it?
oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right down in the center of Vancouver. So there's a big football stadium behind us there and an old viaduct that's behind him. And then a lower grade road is the curving one. Right beside the ocean here, or False Creek, it's called. So there's an inlet of water just on the other side of us here.
Is it somebody you know or not?
Yeah, yeah, one of my oldest friends.
Okay. It gives a lot of depth in your photo, eh?
Hmm. Well, it's yes and no because there is a lot of depth there just because of the strength of the architectural features and the lights. But this was late at night. I can't remember. I'm probably shooting at like 1.7. The camera I shoot with at night, if I've got the focus right, I can get really nice separation and a decent shutter speed for these kinds of shots. So it is actually kind of blurred out, but the elements are pretty distinct nonetheless.
Well, I
Mhm.
mentioned that in my comments. I think you could have shot two quick succession photos,
Mhm.
one focused on him and one focused on the background, then blended it in Photoshop. And I think that would have been fine. That would have been like a deep focus type of thing. However, this brings more attention. Like I said, that would no longer be a portrait.
Yeah, and I mean it's partly like I think I've said in an earlier call, like I spend maybe a little bit too much time using aperture effects and what I try to do mostly more so in the day is like I'll walk around with my camera set at 5.6 f8 because I want a lot of deep detail. But at night, I with this camera, I could have probably pushed that still with one shot and just go for a higher ISO, and the camera is fine with that generally. But in this case, I like the effect of separating a person in this kind of scene.
Yes.
I
Yes.
wish I had been even a bit closer to him, but
Yeah, but now it gives something to guess in the background, huh?
yeah,
When
exactly.
Yeah.
when it's sharp, then you think you don't know where to look, maybe.
Yeah, but the other part of this kind of photo, so I've had a really good week for music. In a matter of 4 days, I've been to 6 shows, and this was one of them afterwards. So it's a late night show, but because I carry a particular camera with me, I walked across the viaduct to get a bus on the way home, and is something I hadn't done for many years. So this week I've walked across it twice, and just being out at night with a camera, it kind of prompts me to go and go places where I think there are interesting things to shoot. So
But you take sometimes photographs of strangers as well, or?
yeah, yeah, and I'm there's a mixture of that. So I do a fair bit of street photography, and then actually last night was really interesting because and I'll maybe post these. I haven't posted them to Flickr yet, but with Guy we were in a place that basically you go to listen to music down in a boxing gym in a really sketchy back alley. So you're surrounded by all of this graffiti and other things. And so I was talking to him and this other guy who is gesticulating madly in front of this interesting graffiti. And so you have all of these images happening. And, I knew him, but I didn't know this other guy, but I was still taking the pictures at the time. And they're really fun. So I love the fact that at night you can so easily have a scene kind of, well, any time of the day really on this day or
This
night.
is after the show, or
This is after the show. This is so about,
because then the people are more, yeah, willing to have a photo.
they're at more ease with life
Yeah.
sometimes. Yeah. No,
And
and I
go
like
ahead.
I like the street photography I've seen of yours, John, and, on your feed too. Like, walking through some of the streets that you live in, let alone the ones you travel to. There's lots of interesting people.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, but
with this photo, I think it's interesting you've got him leaning over. That helps with that curved to the left.
Mhm.
Then you have
yeah,
the harsh
yeah.
angle on the right. That sort of adds that balance. And did you deliberately frame this so he's got a crown?
Um, yes, in the
Okay.
sense that uh, kind of. As you can see, like the viaduct is kind of coming straight across, and it eventually that road kind of passes just under it and then swings off to the south. So I knew that this was like an apex of multiple roads and all these shapes. So it made sense to take a picture.
And so,
Yeah.
yeah, because I think you don't really know. I didn't notice it at first with the crown, but I think that's really adds a little something extra.
Yeah, so the one he was trying to not let me take last night, the crown is still there, but we're about 6 blocks away from here from a different angle. So that one turned out all right, but it's a slightly different dynamic because there's no viaduct.
Now, did you have any issues with focusing?
Um, well, the camera I was using was autofocus, but I often I'm choosing the focus for it more often than not at night, just so I'm really clear where it's going to focus. So in this case, not, but it's entirely possible I would could have been out with my rangefinder, my M10, late at night. It would have then been in color, and that would have been a lot trickier to focus because trying to do this quickly and I'd have to be really wide open to get it with that camera. But this camera, the Q2M, is much more forgiving in terms of latitude with ISO. Sorry,
And you have a wide lens here?
a 28 millimeter.
Yeah. And you use manual with
Yeah, so I typically am I'm set it depends. I mean, in this case I believe I was in manual because I wanted to lock the ISO in and I had locked the shutter speed in that would be reasonably sharp. I can't remember if it's 60 or 125. But I don't always do that. Sometimes I will. What is it at?
1/80th of a
Oh,
second.
180. Okay, yeah. So actually, I may have had it floating here then.
So you have high ISO. Yeah.
Yeah, but I had locked the ISO at
Yeah.
64. I sometimes let it float higher, but then it sometimes, it depends. In the dark, it's okay if it degrades, like you get more texture and noise in the dark, which sometimes works really well in a black and white.
Just what you want, eh?
Well, exactly. Yeah.
And you can do it in different ways. If you want more sharpness in the background, then you need to higher your aperture,
Yeah.
or you can use flash here.
Yeah. But it is this on the same night out, and again, this is more just the joy of being out at night with a camera that is
Yeah.
really capable of getting a lot of light. So, walking up to fountains, putting the camera down on a wall and taking longer shutter speeds, like, I'm not going to ever carry a tripod with me in this kind of evening
Oh.
out. So I'm using elements, to lean against buildings, up to
But with
something.
with a tripod, you are for the people more a photographer, eh? So
Exactly.
you need to mingle, how you say, with the
Yeah.
people.
And I think that rail will be in the way of a tripod there too. You would have to be a little bit farther to the right.
Yeah, and with the strap around one's neck because you have this moment of fear that oops, and there goes the
Yeah.
camera down 10 meters.
So yeah, without getting up, what I usually do is I have a little spot and I use back button focusing. So I'll either move the camera or move the spot to focus on like his face, for example.
Hmm.
So I'm able to very reliably focus because it seemed like this would be challenging. It could try to be focusing on the background, for example.
Well, and it is an interesting thing for me because I was noticing last night that even though the camera is shooting with has autofocus, and I could trust it to, you like I can say, look for eyes and things, faces and eyes and such. Because I shoot so much with a manual focus rangefinder where I place the focus, that's the only way it go, like, physically with the camera. I find that I'm more often kind of using autofocus in the sense that I create I set it to a little zone and I move the zone around. So I had put the focus on his face rather than letting the camera do it and then shoot. And I find depending on the circumstance, and I had time here, but it's just more reliably getting the camera to focus where I want it to, as opposed to where the camera thinks I want to.
It is an old trick to always have your focus when you have a 250 and f8, eh?
Yeah,
Yeah.
F8 and be there.
And then mostly everything is in focus.
Yeah. Well, that is one wonderful thing about shooting with more wide angle lenses. So with 24, 28
And
millimeter,
it's more easy. Yeah.
yeah, you can just have this wonderful depth well set. So things are critically or close to critically sharp. A lot harder if you're using like a 50 millimeter with a wide open aperture. Because if you're off then, and I often am, then you really notice it.
Yeah, but with the 28 go is more easy. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, if you use a wide angle lens with focus stacking, even something close up, you're only going to get 4 or 5 images in a focus stack because you
Yes.
don't have much of a range.
Right. Yeah. How does that work with photo stacking? Because you also get, certain kinds of distortion with, or increased amount of distortion with a wider lens. So how do you handle that when you're stacking? Because you'd see it really on the edges, I would think.
I don't normally do a lot of wide angle stuff, even in landscapes, because I'll do stitch panoramas for landscapes.
Right.
But you don't notice that. I've never noticed that. I guess if you had some geometrical elements that were significant, especially that with lines that would float out to the edges, you might find some issues there that need to be touched up. Generally, with focus stacking, and most focus stacking in landscape is you don't almost never have out of weird artifacts as opposed to macros.
And then the bees, they move.
Yes,
That's no problem.
don't focus. You can't focus unless they're asleep. I've gotten several shots, and I've seen other shots too, where a bee is asleep or dead or something on a branch. And the thing about it is, they look like they're dead.
Hmm.
So, I mean, yeah, you can get a nice sharp, you get some good details with focus stack, but it's not the same as a bead. It's actually a live that's animated.
Yeah.
And you can't focus stack those things. And especially if you want to, like if you use a flash, you can freeze the image to like, well, like a 4,000th of a second. And you can't, even if you have bright light with a tight aperture, you're still not going to get that much sharpness.
Mhm.
So even if you were able to focus stack 4,000th of a second isn't going to, I mean, you'd have to do it like the focus stack would have to be within that 4,000th of a second.
Yeah.
Also, lastly on this image, did you use any smoothing on this? Or noise
Um,
reduction?
I denoised it. I've been doing that a little bit more, and then I basically mask it really aggressively so that the any kind of noise reduction or sharpening is happening just where I want it to, like mostly on the lines, but and mostly because I with darker tones or if I have a shallower depth of field, any kind of smoothing stuff just takes away detail.
Okay.
But I
So
do, if I've got enough light with a shot like this, because coming out of my camera, these files are fairly flat. But that also means I've got a really nice latitude of tonal range that I can work with. So I do kind of usually kind of bring the contrast up a little bit, unless I bring it down, and the clarity up a little bit. And for night shots, I find that that really kind of gives a nice boost.
and you when you make the photo, you make it in color or you make it in black and white?
This camera is a monochrome sensor, so it only sees luminance, so
Okay.
there's no color.
Because last week I'm trying with monochrome in my camera,
Mhm.
and the results are better than when you do it with color, I think.
So do you mean like in terms of like you're using a color camera, shooting it in monochrome or
Yeah.
black and white, or shooting with black and white film?
No, with in the camera with monochrome.
Yeah. What do you find is better, or what's the difference that you see?
More contrast.
Hmm.
And well, in the when you do it in color, you have opportunity uh, to change the colors, but uh, you don't know always exactly what you need to what you need to do. Yeah?
Yeah.
So if there's a lot of red, you can move a little bit with the in Photoshop, but you never know exactly what's the best.
Yeah, we talked a bit about this in the last video call in that like with a you can set your camera to monochrome, and if you're out shooting black and white purposely, I think that that can help you to visualize what you're doing, though I don't think it's necessary. But what it does do is it immediately shows you if you like if you I wouldn't at night, but I might have a yellow filter on at night if I was shooting a lot of people because it'll have an effect on the skin tone even in the black and white image. In the daylight, it can make a huge difference in terms of the sky. But when you remix a RGB image down to black and white, you actually have a fair bit of range to play with the interaction of the three channels you have to work with. So that can work really well. So I really encourage people to get used to playing around with the color channels if you've moved something to black and white in post-processing.
Yeah, and
Because I mean, if you do it in your camera, you're going to have a raw one that has all of that information still. It's just the JPEG that will be black and white in terms of your output.
I use those color channels all the time. That's one thing I'm wondering about with your monochrome raw image. Is that color detail, is it still there?
Well, again, there is no color detail. So the only way there would be color detail is if I took three images with three, like with a red, green, and blue filter. And then I could combine them and create color. But no, there's this luminance value, so it's all great.
Because
I
one
was,
thing I discovered, I don't know if you might have even mentioned this in the comment I made anyway. I thought it would be fun to set my camera viewfinder in
Mhm.
monochrome. Because just so you can visualize, oh, maybe this is how it would look better in black and white or whatever.
Yeah, that's an advantage too. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but when I did that, the raw image was black and white,
Hmm.
and there
Yeah.
was no color information to be dealt with. Like you couldn't in Photoshop, Adobe Camera Raw, there was no what is it, the color sliders.
Oh, really?
Those are
That's
just dead.
interesting.
And what surprised me is when I took photographs monochrome, when I put it in the program in how you call it, Affinity, it
Mhm.
was color again. So then you need to make it black and white again. So he
Well, and
translates the black and white in color, and then I have to turn it back to black and white.
yeah. Well, and it's interesting, and it could be some of the different cameras have different approaches. My understanding generally is that if you're using a sensor, like a color sensor, or like no sensors are color, it's only when you have a Bayer filter in front that they are able to represent color. But the file they output, so the raw, if you actually pull it off the sensor, it's still going to have color information because you're going through a Bayer filter. Whereas if you've got a camera that doesn't have the Bayer filter, every single photo site is like, so you get more resolution because every single photo site is just doing luminance values. Whereas in a Bayer filter, you've got RGB. So you've got, one site doing red, two sites doing green, one site doing blue. And it's that combination that gives you the color. So Teddy, when you say it's the raw file, that's interesting that it's doing it because that still would be interpolated as black and white, not actually black and white.
Yeah, you would think so, but I still need to dig into it more. And I think I could also probably drill into my menus because my Z9 has got like an incredible depth of menus. I mean, all
Yeah.
these menus. I probably just need to change it because what my ideal situation would be to have a button you can press, and while you hold it down, you can visualize black and white. But when you let it, the button is back to color.
Yeah. A lot of people use a profile to do that. So you just switch to a black and white profile and then off you go. And your viewfinder can be set, your output can be set to what you want. But I said before that I sometimes find, especially for like strong, like architectural or kind of street stuff, sometimes seeing it through a black and white viewfinder, if you have an electric viewfinder, is really helpful because it just kind of strips down shapes and lines really quickly for me. That said, if you're shooting with a monochrome camera, like shooting with a camera with a roll of black and white film, you don't need that. You can kind of internalize that pre-visualization as well.
Oh
But
yeah,
it
I think
is,
that's a good exercise to do that.
yeah,
But I like little tools and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
everything.
No, with my M9, which is a color camera, I often shoot black and white in it because it's JPEG black and whites are beautiful, nice, high contrasty, and really nice. I enjoy them. So when I do that, I set it like I'm still seeing everything through an optical viewfinder, but the files I look at on the screen are black and white. So it kind of keeps me in that space, but it's a bit different.
Yeah, I need to shoot more black and white. I always enjoy it. I mean, that's why, of course, that's how we started with black and white back in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah, it's lovely for architecture, lovely for a lot of things, but
Hmm. Well, it's a reduction. There's a reductionism. You're basically simplifying
yeah.
the image. That's just another way to simplify it. So, enough about your photo. Let's bring
Thanks for
John's
popping
photo.
that. Yeah, I like this one.
Yeah. So he's speaking of bicycles, and that is obviously not an electric bicycle.
No, it's not totally sharp in the face, huh?
Let me see. Let me get the.
And I know why it is as well. Because I have how you say, in the viewfinder, you have a choice for the, how you call it, the block
Hmm. Yeah,
to make it sharp, and this was too big.
uh,
So he put, I think I put it on the hand or on the camera. I don't know, but it was not totally,
I
or
think
maybe next to it. I don't know.
I think yeah, that could be. I mean, technically, this could be sharper,
Yeah.
but I don't think it's 100% necessary in for this type of shot.
No.
I mean, here we are looking at it at 100% view. So if we go back to this, uh,
And I cut out a bit, so it's already a crop. So
Well, and he's
yeah,
writing towards you too, so there could be a little bit of motion, although you were set to freeze stuff pretty well here. 1/600th.
so F4.5, yeah, F4.5, you don't have a whole lot of depth of field there.
no.
Um,
But
so
the idea of sharpness is that, again, it's relative, right? In that this is acceptably sharp to me. And it's
Yeah,
possible
but
if I come in too close, I'll notice that it maybe isn't tack sharp, but tack sharp necessarily isn't going to make this a better image or a more compelling image.
it
This
could
works
be,
really well the way it is. It works well in terms of like where you might imagine like it's problematic to pixel peep all the time and then draw back from that and then make a judgment on a picture as a whole. When you look at this picture as a whole, this works really well.
yeah, I
yeah,
agree.
but
It's
nevertheless, I would have more sharp.
Yeah, well, it could be. I mean, it depends on the genre. Like if you're a birder, you could look closely at that and see how sharp it has to be
Yeah.
sharp, but with something like this, it doesn't have to be. However, it is good to take a look at it and go, gosh, I wish I would have done this differently. Yes, that's a good, I mean, so I think a lot of people seem to imply that you don't need to look closely, and there's something wrong with doing that. But that's one of the best ways that you can learn to improve your photography. And even if you don't think anybody's going to notice it,
Yeah,
you
but
do.
afterwards, you say to yourself, well, this boy was circling around me for maybe half an hour. I was sitting on a couch. So I had time enough to do it. So
Well, it's
actually, it was my own fault.
right. It is interesting. Like in the shot, you've got like your depth well goes like look how sharp the license plate is and the sign behind. So he probably had just kind of, he was coming right towards you. He'd probably just gone out of where you had that sharper focus,
Mhm.
just on his, just behind his eyes a little bit.
Yeah.
That's a sharp ear.
Yeah, I was in Nuuk, Greenland with a tour group. And there was a little guy with a bicycle like this following us around. But every time you pointed a camera at him, he darted off. Also, I'm a big fan of like black and white photography and the Ansel Adams and Fred Archer's zone system when how the grayscale is used. So you created this as what do you have in mind when you create a black and white photo as far as your range of tones and the grayscale? So this what do you have in mind? Of course you're going to make it the brightness enough so it looks like a halfway decent photograph, but do you ever consider about what the brightest areas are of the image along with the darkest areas and what's in between?
Yeah. This one I made in black and white as well, in monochrome. So yeah, I see that behind the tree it's pure white,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and his trouser is black, and his bike is black as well. The cars behind him are black. So uh, then you can discuss about where's the gray. Huh? So
Well, I think you did okay here. Let's go back to the bigger size here. If you just take a look at various parts, you see there's lots of gray and gradients. And you don't have, oftentimes people they'll be scared to death of this with the bright area in the corner because they think, well, that's a blown highlight, so I got to take the whole photo down. Which
yeah, I was
there's
thinking about that, but that doesn't matter to me.
yeah,
So
Yeah.
and
uh,
this yeah
I
the
I,
area,
uh, I prefer to have a little more light in the back than do something at my whole photo.
and that's totally natural. I mean, that's what makes for a natural look.
Well, it's
So
far more problematic if you blow highlights on a person. Like the skin tones here are all beautifully held. And
yeah,
so like and shooting often in black and white, it's really easy to blow highlights. So, it's useful to meter for highlights in a scene, but it, doesn't always matter as much if your subject is still illuminated the way you want.
Yeah, when I was back in my darkroom days and I was like studying the zone system, I had a spot meter and I would meter on the dark areas and the bright areas and try to adjust the exposure for that. Of course, I was using a 35 millimeter camera with frames instead of a sheet of film, an
Hmm.
individual. So I would bulk load the film. So I would just be exposing one type of, like maybe I would get 6 images, but that would all shoot those exactly the same. Uh, or just shoot one and then have to develop that after the fact. But that sounds like a lot of fun, but it didn't make much of a difference with 35 millimeter photography. I think it
Right.
really opens it up if you do that with sheet film, like especially 5x7 and above, 4x5 and above. Um, but it is a great exercise, and you'll learn a lot about that.
And there was another thing here going on. I would have had him look at his phone while he was biking.
Yeah,
But he was doing that a lot of times, but this time not.
You're trying to catch the youth doing it something dumb.
Yeah, but you're always searching for the moment, eh?
Yeah, yeah. Teddy, what you said about the black point and the white point, I still have an old habit from how I used to use Photoshop that the very first thing I do to any picture when I bring it in is set the black point and the white point.
Yeah,
yep,
I do
Is
as
that
well.
it's only within those 2 points that I have information.
Yeah,
Anything else I do is making stuff up. So it sets the actual dynamic range of the information that you have in front of you, which is a good thing to do.
yeah. So you can set the black and white slider so you get those little sparkles that show you where the
actually, I
highlights
didn't
from.
do a lot in this picture.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, you've got a really nice range here with your exposure.
I was thinking of cloning that cars behind him, but I didn't. I didn't do
it'd be a
that.
tricky one.
Yeah.
And that's one that, gosh, I mean, how many times I wish I want to get a picture of that building, but there's nothing but cars and trucks in front of it.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, but here he is the player, and then he takes the attention. So yeah, it would be more nice when the cars were not there. But yeah, it's a situation in the street. You cannot change it.
I would used to walk to work all the time in Bloomington, or it'd be like 7 o'clock or 6:30 in the morning, and the sun was coming on this park bench on the sidewalks in downtown Bloomington. I said, "Gosh, that'd be a great photo." So the next day, I brought my camera, and there was a big van parked right there. So well, never mind. I still want to go try to get that image, but that bench is still there.
That's a
So
good
yeah,
habit. I was just going to say it's a good habit to, if you didn't get it the first time, to go back and capture it again. So,
Yeah,
yes,
that's true. But this is in Greece, so it's not so easy. But
no,
mostly I do it like that. When I'm not satisfied, I go back, and then
yeah,
the next time you have it mostly. Yeah, but,
yeah,
you just have to need more. You need more time because and the other thing is you're not always focused
yeah.
on now with this in hand. I know what to do, but
yes,
but actually it was happening when you don't expect. So
Hmm.
uh, you need to have your plan next time. Go to a place where this is happening, and then wait, and then you are more prepared. Yeah? So that is not sharp. I need to have a smaller block in my camera, and well, then it will happen, I think.
well, there was talk about what was it with the discussions we were with the weekly discussions about the come on, what was it? We were a real popular topic. Uh, but what's that? The artist's intention.
Oh yeah,
So, maybe you walk out of the door and you got an intention of shooting this particular object, this subject. But what happens, like what comes up as a surprise. Like then the next thing you know, you got a half a second to respond and grapple with whatever your artistic intention is there. So you
Mhm.
sort of have to just get that by instinct.
Well, I mean, one thing that's interesting, and I don't know, it's so different with different genre of photography, but in a street photography moment, one of the things that, when I think about intention here, well, you went out with a 28 millimeter lens. Um, so that's the starting point of being in a good situation where you likely can capture a lot of context as you're walking down the street. And that's maybe quite different than the kind of intention you put into some other kind of like you might be looking for people, you might be looking for certain kinds of interactions. I sometimes might be looking for doorways. I'm looking for just a thing or a certain kind of shot. But the choice of the lens that you walk out with into this kind of photography, for me, like if I've got a 28 millimeter lens on, I'm going to shoot a very different kind of thing than if I have a 75 millimeter lens.
Right.
It just changes what I am paying attention to in the street. And I have found it really, really useful not to give myself too many choices. So I'll walk out the door with one lens. And then that's where I have to lock in. And it's generally a better situation than, fumbling around and looking for the right focal length. That's where a zoom would be so useful, but I do like the constraints of just going out at 28 millimeters and shooting.
Yeah, and then with artist intentions, I mean the phrase "frame the shot and wait." My grandfather taught me that. I think that was something he read in a photography book somewhere, and I've heard other people talk about that. So if you, in particular with street photography, if you find a scene like a sidewalk and you have a nice arch frame or something like that, and just wait for somebody to enter the scene,
Yep. It's
which
called
I think
fishing.
is a great tool, but I think many will think that you're not being spontaneous enough.
Well, the metaphors I've heard, like that's called fishing in terms of
Yep.
how I hear people talk about it. So you find your
Mhm.
spot, you wait for your fish to swim through, or you go hunting, which is a little bit more like you're walking through and something happens in front of you and you're there in the right moment. And some of that might be because you already figured out where to be, but one is you might just be sitting at a table and you are lined up for the shot and there it is, or was it Cartavia sitting up on the top of a stair waiting for the bike to come by? That kind of thing.
Yeah, but in one hand, it's a bit of a kind of easiness as well. Eh? When you
Hmm.
wait till the people are coming, uh, that's more easy than go into the crowd and make pictures.
Yeah. But I
Uh,
think, oh, sorry.
I've seen one, I don't know the name, one photographer. He makes photos walking.
Yeah.
He doesn't stop. He just go into the crowd and make pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If he had made a picture, he walked through. So he never looks in his viewfinder. He just go. So he make a lot of meters, and he do it like that.
Yeah,
And
one of the guys in my photography club, he uses his iPhone at waist level and he has a remote trigger and just feels for it. And he says most of the photos don't turn out, but the ones that do are worth the effort.
I've done that as well, but more for photos when I'm too shy.
Yeah.
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 So you hang your photo in front of your stomach, and you make photos with your mobile. So I have an app in my mobile connected with my camera, and I go to stand in front of a station where people are talking, and they don't notice that I have a camera because it's in front of my stomach, and I make photos with my cell phone.
And if you take a picture sometimes and you're waiting for people to enter the scene, they'll stop because they're waiting for you to take the picture.
Yeah.
No, no, no.
But for me, that's a new way as well because
Yeah,
I
that's a good one.
did it like that. So because you can go more close, huh?
Yeah. Going back to intention, I think the other thing that I think is useful, and I sometimes watch how people are when I see a photographer in a crowd or at an event, I kind of watch. I think over time people get a good sense of like where do they have to be to get the right sight line for the kind of image they're trying to produce. So at these music events that I've been going to, there's a photographer there who I think's been going for about 20 years, and he is always in exactly the right place through the night he moves to different places, but he'll always have the angle. So then I start just kind of watching, okay, so that's the place to go if I want to, be a little bit have a
Yeah,
better line on
it's
whatever. And there's the same thing with the crowd. Or how you walk through a scene, you figure out that moving into a position is going to typically land you in better results, regardless of what the situation is. So it's a good thing to practice.
yeah, for example, when you are was standing at the bus stop, when the bus is coming, everybody is going to move. And so when you expect where they are moving, then you can easily make the picture because everybody's busy with stepping in or out of the bus and
Yeah.
not is not busy with you.
Yeah, same thing with a train, like a subway or something.
Yeah.
But I think practice is what you're talking. The word practice is important. Like this guy sees it. He knows where these places are, these sweet spots
Yeah.
that he's learned by with trial and error. And you hear a lot of talk about, you get a feeling for the photograph, which is great. And some people are geniuses, like some of the most famous photographers, street photographers, they just have a knack for it.
Yeah.
But I think most of us, we need to do things that simply increase the chances of getting a good photo. And we have to do things, some deliberate things,
Yeah.
like frame the shot and wait, for example, looking for when's the bus going to arrive, and learning from your friend who knows where they're supposed to stand.
Yeah. I
When
think
you know your surrounding and when you know your place, it's more easy as well.
yeah.
Because when I'm in a strange city, I don't know where the buses are stopping, and I don't know how many people are going out and what's the hour for office and things like that.
Yeah.
But if I'm in my own place, I know exactly what's going on, so it's more easy.
One thing I noticed some years ago is that whenever I would travel, and especially to like places that were quite different than where I'm from, so like let's say to India or Mexico or someplace like that, I would just go into a frenzy of street photography, and landscape and other things, but street photography in particular, where I suddenly was taking pictures I just wasn't typically taking here at home. And I think part of that I kind of brought back with me and changed because I can do just as much of that kind of be curious about and noticing the world around me here as when I'm in a place where I don't know anything. So I might not know the right places in that, but I'm very prompted to be walking through places. So like when I was in Tokyo a couple of years ago with my family, my son and I, we just spent the whole day walking through neighborhoods, taking pictures, and it was just absolutely predicated on being lost, being in unfamiliar circumstances, and everything catching our eyes. And that's a good disposition to bring back into the city you do live in, wherever that is too. But I take your point about how, when you know a place well, not only do you know that this is a good site to be, but you probably have tried it at different times of the day, different times of the year, and you have an appreciation of what to expect, which gives you.
What angle you want and
Yeah.
things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I know like where I was downtown in Vancouver, in this time of year, the sun has swung around so that when it's going down, it's shooting down these long horizontal line, like the east-west corridors of the arterials. So it shoots all the way down that, and that kind of light is the kind of light that some Fred Herzog used to shoot in Vancouver at that time of year in those same streets. So I know I can go down there, and there's going to be this light well coming from kind of this beautiful softening light. And you see some of the photographers in cities who kind of take advantage of how is the light going to be at a certain time of day, certain time of year, to get these incredible opportunities to have basically it's nature's studio lights, I suppose, right? It's you know that you're going to be able to work with that, and you can choose to be in it at a certain time of day to get advantage for your shots.
Mhm.
And if you're in a city, you have, especially on a bright sunny day, when you have watch the shadows that fall across the
Yeah.
walls and things like that. And that's where you can usually look for the shadows.
Yeah.
And that's where you'll get drama and energy.
Yeah, last night there was all of this wonderful bright light and harsh shadows on the facades of buildings. So you get these buildings just kind of illuminated because of that flat light, and then it's picking up reflections from other ones. So, like good things happen when you pay attention to the light.
Oh yeah. If you're walking down a trail, like in a state park or something like that, and there's sunbeams coming down from the trees overhead, the canopy of trees, and just look for the sunbeams. And especially if you're doing macro photography, every sunbeam is going to have at least one spider in it
Yeah.
because there are spiders everywhere, But that's when you shoot the image of the spider. That's when you get the really cool, you know, specular highlights and stuff coming off the spider's legs and the web and so forth. But you can also do that in cemeteries, big cemeteries. Watch for the sunbeams that come across the faces of the carved statues and things like that. So, and I had let me see, I had a couple of questions I was going to ask you guys. Where did I put that? Mhm. Back here any minute now. Also, I've got some sample photos. I'm just going to run through you guys. In fact, I might do that right now instead. Let me get my Photoshop up. Now, okay. Do you know who that is?
My former queen.
Yes. Are you still seeing my Photoshop windows? Trying to get rid of them.
That's beautiful.
Okay, that's a photographer named Cecil Beaton. Just to give you an idea, he was like the official photographer of the Queen especially the Queen's family, Queen Elizabeth's family. And there's tons of pictures of her, some really cool photos. But here
Nice,
is another photo of
nice
him.
blue lights from behind. Eh?
Was going to go on the previous one, Teddy.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do a weekly comment. Blue the highlight, free flight.
Yes. I wouldn't be surprised if this is a little bit like a copy of a copy of a copy.
Yeah, even with the highlights blown, it's a beautiful picture. I was just
Yes. It's like the silhouette with the a high key section of this photo.
Mhm.
yeah,
I think it's probably in Westminster Abbey, which if you've been to Westminster Abbey, it's had gorgeous sunbeams, and you don't. There's not photography is not allowed.
yeah. Well, and that depth there that it captures with all the light receding in the background, it's a really nice shot.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, Cecil Beaton is one of my favorite photographers, and that's a picture he took in World War II. He got a whole series of World War II photographs. So I was mainly the picture of the Queen. I was sort of get a framework of what this guy's like, who he is as a photographer. And what are your thoughts on this photo?
a lot of gray and a little black, eh?
Well, with both of these shots, there's a real appreciation in the composition to layers, and like this one going, with I guess the barricade or the wall the subject is standing against, and then you see the rest of the fortifications in the back and the play of the shadows. And then in the previous one with again the layers into the background of the cathedral, um, you know, seems to be very much what this photographer is seeing and trying to produce. I love the shadows here in particular.
Yeah, it's quite nice.
He's sort of breaking the rules with the person looking outside of the frame like that. They
Yeah,
should be looking into the frame, but it works really well
yeah,
because of the situation with all the sandbags. And if you look in the distance, those are still sandbags, that wall of sandbags.
Yeah,
And the light
great shot.
illuminating his face
yeah.
is coming in just right.
And you could say it has not a lot of contrast, but well, because of his head is black, it's working well.
Yeah, let me see if we can find another one here. Oh yeah, we were talking about Moriyama. Remember we were,
Mhm. Yeah, the Japanese photographer.
yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Now, what's the first thing you notice in this photo?
The vignette.
The grain and the vignette, yeah. But then, the subject there with the kind of tumble of old cars and the all of the grain in the grasses. So wherever there's shadows, there's going to be grain here.
And I'm actually one because this photo was taken back in this, I believe, in the 70s. And I one thing I hate is patterns and noise.
Mm.
And I doubt that this original image had these patterns. Probably a high grain, but it's also possible that they applied some type, he might have had some type of mesh when the photo was taken or created in the darkroom.
Yeah, maybe he pushed it too much, the film.
But the other is the angle that's crooked,
Yeah.
which,
Oh, I mean, the photographs of his that I've seen, they don't really kind of, he doesn't seem to care so much. And I think to very good artistic effect that this is level. He wouldn't care so much that there is a lot of grain, but also a lot of shadow. So a lot of his shots, seem to be fairly underexposed, maybe in one sense, or have these kind of contrast between really bright objects and underexposed areas. They're the shots I've seen, they're very moody, they're very atmospheric, and really good effect, especially some of the night shots he's done in Japanese cities.
and that bright vehicle in the center really brings that together, even though it's blown.
Yeah,
And I think the angle, especially with all the crooked cars, that crooked van, it's almost like a face looking this way, and that angle sort of is almost rhythmic
It
with the
was
crooked
was on a,
horizon.
was it on a hill or is it just the horizon is not straight?
like that's probably in the US because he did do a bunch of projects in the US.
Hmm.
Yeah, that definitely looks like cars from the US. That would 70s, that might be, but to look at the cars and I think about that could be the early 80s,
Yeah.
especially in a junkyard.
Hmm.
But then we'll go to another one of his photos here.
Oh, that's not straight as well. He don't like the horizon straight, I think.
Well, he adds tension in by doing this, right? And it's also falling off the side of the road. It's I keep, yeah, I just love these shots.
But what you can get away with though, I mean, you could just cut this image to pieces critically,
Hmm.
but you don't have to. I mean, that's not. I mean, if you there has to be something there. And I would like to say there's got to be something pretty darn good in order to overlook that stuff, and that's what's happened here. Like
There are the
if you
real
take
blacks and the real whites in it. Huh?
yeah
Hmm. Well, and I mentioned some weeks back, like I have been experimenting a lot more with some of the perspective tools to change the geometry a bit on
yeah
an image. And quite a few times I notice that when I actually straighten everything, the picture is lesser. Something gets lost. So this picture could very simply be kind of altered to fix a couple of these lines to straighten out the but I don't think it would be as impactful a picture if that were done.
what what can make a crooked horizon work is the addition of some type of emotional like there's a dramatic scene or
Hmm.
apply an energy to it. It's not like you're not really looking for something normal. It's more like a glance or,
Yeah.
and I think
Well, the
that he
strong
used,
white line and the train here, that kind of anchors this in the only horizon really needed.
and there's something about it's called the provoke movement that he started. I need to
Hmm.
learn more about that. Like as a photo is, it's a provocational.
Yeah, he is against something or but the lines are giving you a feeling that you don't need the horizon. It's true.
No, and you can have like Dutch angles, which are fine. I mean, those are usually harder angles. But you can, like with Jaws or something, where Roy Scheider's head is popping up as we need a bigger boat, with this that kind of thing. You get this energy, this like drama with it, with a Dutch angle. But this isn't exactly a Dutch angle. But you do have the train track and the edge of the road, and I don't know. It's just, again, I think this guy knows how to pick it. He's got a talent for it.
Yep.
Where most of us, we have to work at it more. I mean, I'm sure he works hard. He worked hard at this image, but
Uh, when uh, when we make a photograph like this, they say, "Well, it's not straight."
yeah,
You should clone out that little thing in the front there, that white thing that's distracting.
yes, it needs to be cloned out. What's going on?
But I mean, the other part, when you look at this photographer's work and actually you look at, various of the collections he's done, he also has a visual style. And, when I look at this picture, I almost recognize his style immediately because he shoots like this. And so I think intention for lots of folks, I think if they start thinking about it, goes far beyond just an individual photograph. It's to, how you're approaching your photography or what kinds of things you're doing. And it's not like it has to be just one thing, but it's really wonderful when you just kind of identify a style of someone because that's what they've worked to develop.
Yes, and which is I'm going to try to follow through on that if I can get. Here we go. Another photographer, William Mortensen. When you, uh, no, I'm going to go. No, we're going to the other way. Eggleston.
Eggleston, yeah.
So here is an image. So what are your thoughts about that image?
I can see why you took it.
I mean, this looks like one of my buddy's bedrooms back in 1968.
Yeah. Yeah, with not enough electrical outlets, so you have to kind of create some more off the one power or the one light outlet.
Yeah, and the particular plug on that beige cut plug, that was one you get at the grocery store where you could just slip onto a bare wire and clamp it down. It turns into a male plug.
Nice construction.
Yeah. Well, and like with this picture, like the geometry is all over the place, but looking at that room, I've lived in places where there's no straight lines. The walls are kind of a little bit bent, the floor is a little bit uneven. So it immediately throws you into kind of a sketchy room, if you will. And, the electrical system there helps with the big crack in the ceiling. And then, that's a very bright red room with, sex positions, posters kind of half cut off, but kind of enough to tell you what that they're there. So yeah, I like the fact that most of the room is left outside, but there's enough framed here to kind of get me thinking about the rest of the room.
Yeah, I remember that specific poster of the Kama Sutra.
Hmm.
And it's a blacklight poster. You notice there's a blacklight above it.
Yeah.
And also you notice the different, the angles from the positions on all the angles of the room, that it's sort of a play on that. And basically, though, the subject is the red just penetrates.
Yep.
And mostly when the composition is in the middle, the composition is boring, but here it is not. And so because of you have that window there, and you have that a fish with these positions, and then you go to think what is happening in this room? Huh? What?
Yeah. When you said Eggleston, I mean, I can totally see this kind of perspective in this shot. I've enjoyed some of Artem's photos with the street toys. And again, that style of just taking something like, the shot in front of us is a really just a plain old room, kind of an interesting one, but it's how it's been framed. It's just kind of telling a story, kind of drawing you in. It's very evocative. It's really interesting.
And it has triangles as well with the lines.
Amir mentioned that our Tim's shot had a Eggleston vibe to it.
Yeah, Eggleston was one of the. He was credited for bringing art, color photography into the art world. Of course, it was. Oh gosh, what's the guy's name over there in Vancouver? Oh,
Fred Herzog.
Fred Herzog. Because Fred
Yeah,
Herzog, and there was another color photographer in the early '60s who actually MoMA brought those guys in. I think Eggleston is actually who put it on the map for whatever reason. That's when things really exploded with color photography. But another Eggleston shot is this one
Yeah.
that everybody recognizes with the tricycle.
Yeah, and again, it's just a mundane object, so, kind of rendered in a splendid way.
Yeah, with the car in between the wheels.
Perfect. Yeah. He had a real eye for kind of perspective through objects.
Well, if it were my photo, I would have cloned out that car bleeding out on the right. However, back then, this is like, late 60s, early 70s, you had to airbrush that stuff out meticulously.
But would it be a better image with that airbrushed out, or for not having a white frame around the previous one? I don't know. I think this works.
Yeah. So, and also, here's another thing I think we were talking about in one of the discussions with narrative. And one thing there are many different types of narratives. And if you see photos with old cars, there's a narrative there. You mean, wow, look at those vintage cars. You see the style of the neighborhood and that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably not a very safe tricycle for kids now. You probably have a completely different design tricycle. So when the photo was taken new, that was not present. That was not part of the narrative at all. But as the photograph becomes older, it does very much. And I think I did read an interview by another street photographer, and I can't remember his name now, but he frequently has like gas stations along Route 66 and people with these old cars from the 60s and early 70s. And a student would ask him, how do you get such vintage looks in your photos? So, he just took the picture at the right part of the century. You can't. And I think that's what people will do if you go out and take pictures of your city, your hometown and stuff like that. 20 years later, there's going to be a very significant narrative about where historically it was placed, and it's going to add a lot of value to your photo that won't be there yet. Because I take my hometown, I used to take a lot of photos, so I'll post them, right? Oh, these are great. I love these because this store is no longer there. There's no longer the phone booth. There's no phone booths in town, that type of thing. I keep telling those guys, just go out there and start taking pictures of your own hometown. And 20 years later, everybody's going to think you're a hero,
Well, and even taking pictures of like billboards or like posters, adverts for concerts, and the graffiti and stickers all over the place.
Yep.
I'm always taking pictures of that stuff because it's so interesting, and it will age well.
Yes. And then another Eggleston, which this one is William Eggleston. What are your thoughts on this?
I've not seen this one before.
Now, I would say this is an okay photograph with autumn colors of the blue sky, but is it anything?
Not so special, huh?
Yeah.
Because has 3 different trees and a roof of 3 or 4, and a roof of a house, and that's it. Yeah, the light is beautiful, but
Well, and having just the crop of the top of that house is interesting here too. I mean, if we didn't know this was famous photographer, we probably would dismiss this one fairly quickly, but we do. So now we're looking at it for a while. There's lots of cool negative space. It's intentional that that house has been left there. And so it does make me wonder, I'd like to pan below and see more, but at the same time, I can find value in the approach. It's not as distinct as the previous one in some respects, but
Yeah, you can say what kind of house would be there, but in the other one it was more to guess.
well,
Here,
and this looks like a more established neighborhood in that. So yeah, again, I mean, in terms of what it's doing as a photograph, we could like the fact that there's all the corners have um, somewhat disconnected elements, and there's really no care for there being a strong. I mean, the trees are the subject, or the sky behind the trees is the subject with the shapes of the branches and the colors. But I'm sure our colleagues in Weekly would toss this one in an instant.
Yeah, well, I would go so far as to say, I mean, of course, it's a famous photographer that you know about, so you would to look closely at that because of that. However, I don't think that this shooting up at the sky with leaves isn't exactly his best stuff.
no.
You know, I mean, I think he was more taking pictures of tricycles or cars or people, and there were some of the most lovely images of people. Let me see what this one is. I thought I
Yeah,
had
but sometimes it's difficult to say what photos are better and what not. Eh?
like that's a Nicholson.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Again,
very
here you got the narrative of the old car. It wouldn't have been when he took this, it was just a car.
And the men are standing on the same manner, same way. Look like trees.
Yeah, they do. I mean, it's curiously framed, but it also works really well looking right down the center with the two men on either side.
And the color is a bit off, eh?
Yeah, and sometimes it's kind of hard to tell what the original photo would look like if we actually saw this. But also, there's obviously some type of racial, civil rights thing involved with this, with the white coat. Maybe that has anything to do with it at all, but it's sort of that brings that to mind. At that period of time is
Late 60s,
late 60s, early 70s.
that was the car. It is curious, like, in terms of framing it, so the car is partially cut off.
Yeah.
And it's hard to know. Like, it's possible that this was cropped in the dark room, but possibly not. But that's the view that the photographer wanted. And it does
Uh,
force us. I mean, the subjects are already very powerful, but I could see some people wanting completion on that car, but it does work the way it's cut and not quite in half, but into a third
yeah,
or
it
two
is not,
thirds.
not always necessary to have everything in the frame, eh?
Yeah.
I see his left feet as well to the border of the
Yeah, yeah,
car.
yeah.
Just chopped
But
off his toe.
it gives you a bit of feeling of, uh, well, uh, it gives tension.
Yeah, I would say too, when you talk about the use of space, how you usually pose people, again, there's the man with the suit looking out from the center of the image, but the guy with the white jacket, he's looking in, and I think he's looking at the man. So what you can read into that, I don't know, but
Oh,
that's food for thought.
yeah, that is good for the photo. Yeah.
Hmm.
And that's something else I was going to bring up too about distracting objects. Like there's a little piece of trash or something there right behind their leg.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people would say, well, that's a documentarian type of thing. That was part of the scene, so that's important there to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but however, what would be the difference if he said, "Oh, I'm going to pull the white." He could have just picked that piece of trash out and put it behind him. Would that violate the true reality of the scene any more than if you were to clone it out?
Well, I mean, a photograph violates the true reality of a scene because it
Mhm.
extracts a limited view of it. But I mean, it is an interesting question. I mean, I don't know enough about his style. Like, if he like, I get a sense that he was more just trying to document what he saw. And I would think that cleaning up the scene would maybe not be something that he would choose to do. But, I think of, even with a flower shot, I sometimes will move a stem, but I sometimes think about, do I really want to do that? Well, it'll be a better shot if I do, but a lot of folks just want to shoot what's in front of them.
Nowadays you will clean it up, but in that day, maybe
It'd be
they
hard to do. You
clean
get to
it up
airbrush it.
because for them was not the problem.
Well, and I think
Yeah.
that's really the thing. I think for a lot of folks, it would change what they're trying to accomplish if you start to, I really like this thing that I shot, but now I'm going to take these elements out or I'm going to hide them because there's this other thing I'm going for. But most of the shots that we see are kind of what he shot. I don't get a sense that well, I mean, this one's kind of curious because they do seem kind of posed. Or maybe just caught them in a moment. I don't know. That'd be the other question I have for a photo like this. Is it a candid or is it more a staged shot?
I would say it looks like an accident. There's something an accident with his car, or therefore he's looking like that. But
Yeah, or something. Yeah, something's happening off scene and he's turned and captured them. Like, again, this seems more documentary or just a street shot than something that has been constructed.
Yeah, I would say I think people are a lot more forgiving of back before they could easily clone things out. And now you aren't. And also, I'm not 100% sure, but can you tell if there's a person behind the steering wheel?
I can't. There's too much
It sort of
reflection.
seems like a
yeah,
hand.
there's
Maybe it's
some.
just my imagination,
Yeah,
but
there is somebody there with his hand on the. Yeah,
sort of a mysterious element there.
yeah.
Now, it looks to me like this is the edge of a driveway, like a dark gravel driveway, and there's probably a house or a restaurant or something there that they're looking toward or waiting for somebody else to show up, kind of thing. So another William, totally different style. And this is more back in the 1940s, 50s. William Mortensen. This guy was he did like Hollywood still photography and stuff like that, like headshots. But he also did some fantastical stuff.
Today's Zoom has a Harry Howson kind of vibe to it. This is great.
Yeah, it does. So Ansel Adams is famously known for claiming that William Mortensen is the Antichrist.
Wow.
He hated Mortensen.
Hmm.
And actually, in Ansel Adams, you're aware of there are 3 books he did: the camera,
Mhm.
the negative, and the print. 3 books. And I've got, where did I put it? I've got a William Mortensen. Wait a minute, I kind of stop sharing for a second. Come on. It's easier said to stop sharing than meets the eye. I'll just say what is. I've got a book here in my hand, William Mortensen, on the negative, that predates Ansel Adams' negative.
Mhm.
Now, Adams' book about the negative is much better than Will Mortensen's book. It's really interesting, some of the stuff he has to say about it. But Adams, I mean, that was a technical masterpiece. All 3 books. So the guy was like an expert photographer, but Adams hated him. And there's a great documentary narrated by Vincent Price about William Mortensen too, if you wanted to go.
Oh gosh, that sounds like it'd be fun.
Yeah.
Well, these were shot like in the 30s, right?
30s, it's hard to say. He was
1920s,
famous for some photos of Fay Ray, who who's the woman that was in the original King Kong,
Yeah.
the
I mean,
beauty that killed the beast.
right. I mean, what immediately comes to mind when I'm looking on a website of some of his images, I mean, this is the birth of cinema,
Yeah.
the early days of cinema, not quite the birth, but there's such a cinematographic quality to this of the kind of early black and white films when things were moving. But then some of his other ones, they are, like the kind of overwrought studio shots with classical themes. And so he's got shots of Salome and Sappho and other kinds of characters that are being presented dramatically. So it is fantastical. It is quite wonderful, but it is, it's yeah. I appreciate your putting me onto him. I'm gonna have to
Yeah.
look into
The
this stuff.
witch, the woman flying over the city with as a witch was like absolutely gorgeous image.
Yeah, and they were showing like on the site I'm on there, talking about the preparation for making that shot. So I don't know I saw a film on who's not Charlie Chaplin, contemporary, Buster Keaton,
Yeah.
and showing all of the kinds of effects, the camera effects that were often on in the background that were allowing for some of the kind of crazy physical comedy and the slapstick, and a lot of it was just perspectival kind of positioning of objects and things, and that's happening in this work as well, or his works. So again, this seems like people having a lot of fun who also have connections into the film industry.
Yeah, and here's the witch.
Wow.
1927.
Why did Adams hate him so much?
Because he heavily manipulated stuff, like there's no way that was probably a woman that was posed
Yeah.
on cushions and he superimposed that over this image of a town type of thing. And I think that's the type of thing that Adams hated. It's like
But Adams manipulated things heavily.
he did from within he didn't like add things.
Hmm.
For example,
Well, it's
this
a,
this
it's
is
a
the composite.
double photo or something.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a
Has to
witch.
be, yeah.
So, but yeah, if you Google Ansel Adams and the Antichrist, you're gonna find you can learn more about William Mortensen.
Hmm.
Well, I'm looking for the Vincent Price documentary because that would be
Yeah,
fun.
there's a YouTube thing. Where were we? Then and here's the new 21st century photographers.
Hmm.
I think how to pronounce Haum Yaum Lawrence.
Oh, that's cool. Can you
This is taken
put it
this
as a
century.
larger size?
What's that? I'm sorry.
You zoom in a little bit?
Oh yeah, I guess we can go. It's only at 50%. There we go.
Yeah, that's gorgeous.
I see him.
Yes.
Or I guess that'd just be shutter speed, wouldn't it?
But just a slow sputter. Shutter.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm guessing 15th of a second, 10th of a second.
Yeah.
So have you both tried this with pigeons?
No, I have not. I want to play with something like that.
Yeah. So pigeons will train you. Or we in Vancouver we have crows that muster. So
Yeah.
these kinds of shots with crows are possible.
Yeah, every very early spring, the crows are all nuts over here in Bloomington. It's like every afternoon. I mean, it seems like the crows will get on top of the trees and watch the sunset. They'll
Yeah.
quiet down long enough to watch the sunset. Then they take off crawling again.
Yeah, to go sleep in their roost.
Yeah.
This is really nice, and I mean, I love these kinds of images of birds where you're actually trying to capture the motion and the fluidity of how they move in flocks. It's quite beautiful.
Yeah, and it's pictorialism, and I think uh, and a lot of people, it's not true photography or like real photography, pure photography is what I'm trying to say, like Ansel Adams or something. But this was absolutely reality. The reality, because just because you didn't limit the time doesn't mean this isn't an actual real photograph.
Yeah.
And you didn't add anything to it. It was part of the real scene.
Well, some of the early writers on the development of photography kind of focused on how it opened up a different sensibility in our awareness of the world. in part because it could slow down time or it could freeze time. So, if you think of some of the Muybridge experimentations with kind of freezing motion and
Horns.
showing
Yeah.
how things go, and then the same thing in terms of opening up this idea of elongation of time and the movement of people or in this case the birds. So it's doing something that you couldn't easily do before photography and presenting it to us. I mean, you could do it through impressionistic painting and other such things, but this is really quite pleasant.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a Goose Pond here in Bloomington. There's it's known for like these migration, like storks and geese and things like that. You can get. I need to go there someday because the photography club always goes there. This would be a great place to get shots like this because you have just thousands and thousands of birds overhead.
Yeah. A couple of months ago, I posted a picture to Weekly that was not nearly as interesting as this, but it was a flock of snow geese who took flight about 3 meters in front of me, and suddenly they just burst out, and I was snapping madly trying to get a couple shots. And apart from it being visually, it was like really exciting to be in the midst of that. The noise was really substantial too. So I'm not sure of how noisy these birds were, but it's quite something to be in a mass of so many creatures.
This is not noisy. Yeah.
I mean, if it was my shot, I'd like to like again with the zone system. I'd like to play with the full range of gray, and this is kind of almost like a low key,
A dual tone.
but this works. I mean, this wouldn't be my goal. I wouldn't if I would took this picture, I would not be setting it up this dark.
No.
But it works. I mean, I think this is a good job. They did. This was appropriately exposed, and
It's almost abstract, huh?
yeah, like there's probably like zone 5 is the brightest, zone
Yeah.
5, 6 tops, like right in the middle of the grayscale. Then there was another more recent photographer.
This would look beautifully mounted with back illumination.
Yeah, here's a Ludovic Viard.
Well,
Nice.
that's fun. And just the plane of the umbrella. Nice.
Exciting that her eyes are not visible, huh?
Yeah.
But the lips are, and you get the raindrops.
And very contrastful. And has some the gray tone, gray as well.
And yeah, I can't tell it, but there's not much noise.
No.
One thing I don't really care that much for with a lot of modern black and white photographers, they just can't resist shooting triax and pushing it to 800 and 1600. And you just get all this noise. I mean, that's noise is an effective tool and can be beautiful, but it's like that's the only thing they ever want to do anymore. But this is like a very fine grain.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can see all the raindrops on the umbrella above, and
It's just
all the detail there. Huh?
Yeah. Now this is a great shot.
Yeah. See, it's not in the middle. It's nice as well.
Yeah. But the entire umbrella is within
Yeah,
frame.
but C is in the left.
Yeah. So if it's part of the umbrella was cut off, you go, well, it's too bad their umbrella's cut off.
Yeah, but
And I'm guessing it's a flash too.
yeah. Oh yeah, yeah.
Because if you take a look at the streak in the upper right-hand corner,
Yeah.
that looks like he moved like from
Mm.
right to left when he was holding the flash up and the umbrella of the shadow of the umbrella cut across her face.
And on the right you have black space, so only a black space, empty space. So that's good as well.
So a lot of photographers do flash like that.
Yeah.
Famous, what's this guy, Bruce Gilden
Bruce
or something?
Gilden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like really obnoxious about it too. And there's a guy he used to be in the Weekly all the time, and I actually met in Paris. but he specializes in that kind of off-camera flash. And we'll go back to an older photograph. Richard Avedon,
Oh yeah.
and this is in Paris.
Lovely low perspective to get the rollerblades, roller skates.
I actually roller skate in that very place. I think it's at the Palace de Concorde or something like that.
So how did they get her coat to the tails of that to be just so perfectly like that? I mean, that has to be momentum.
Well, he's a famous fashion photographer. If you Google Richard Avedon, you
Mhm.
see tons of famous photographs.
I think, or I was thinking maybe he used flash as well.
Yeah,
Probably.
the Phil Flash.
Yeah.
And I'll bet they stiffened that or had a wire in that.
It looks very perfect.
It's like an arrow almost, you know?
He's lying on the ground.
There was another, oh, come on, where are you? No, I can't find the one I was trying. Nope, it's not there now. But fashion photography is an interesting field. And if you ever see the movie, a Fred Astaire and Audrey Hepburn movie, darn, now I can't remember the name of it, but it's basically it's actually this Richard Avedon photographs are in the credits. And this they shows the people in studios with the models with clothespins in the back of their on their blouses and so forth to make sure this is tight enough and so forth. It's a really interesting, fun film.
Well, when I was looking at this, when I started, and you were talking about his fashion shooting, I was thinking of Saul Leiter's work.
Yes.
And his stuff is so fascinating because there, it has so much of that kind of passage through high fashion and, other kinds of photography like that, and then into this beautiful street photography that he just, does amazing things with light, and he creates these beautiful images just through colors and lots of distortion, and he just captures these great moments. But it has that sensibility of the aesthetic of the scene that seems to drive a lot of it.
But
Yeah,
this is,
yeah. Saul Leiter, yeah, he's a really interesting photographer.
yeah.
Um,
I was wandering off because I've got a book of his that I immediately started thinking about. I mean, the style's very different, and he mostly shot color, as I know, but he did shoot earlier in his fashion career in black and white too.
Yeah.
yeah, I've got one Saul Leiter book. It is the unknown. What is it? The unknown.
He is more an artist.
Yeah,
He has
yeah.
painted before, and he uses reflections a lot in rain.
When I think it really matters that he brings that kind of painterly aesthetic to his photography, because again, what he does with light and colors and reflections, as you say, is really quite remarkable.
Yeah, he has mostly off colors, so uh, uh, with strange colors.
I'm gonna get one up here right now if I get a big enough image. Nope. Saul Leiter. Yeah, the one I got is called the Unseen Saul Leiter.
Yeah, a soft color palette he has.
Hmm.
Yeah,
And there's motion blur.
yeah.
You're using
Yeah.
the element of time. So I would call this a pictorialist image.
Hmm.
And you've also got the narrative of the time. Like this was obviously in the 50s. Like pins
This
and
is my approach.
you could probably zoom in and actually see the date on the license plate there.
Yeah, I've got one up from him again, just using reflections and colors and yeah, just really beautiful.
And this is a picture from the book I've got. If it's, come on, open up. The Unseen. Yeah, this with the,
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, I know this as well. Very nice to see you standing just in front of the shadow.
And he could straighten this out, but it would just lose that, the angle of where, how he's coming across this with across the scene and everything's kind of angling downward, including the sidewalk.
I was shooting some firescapes like that in Chicago with shadows like that, and
Hmm.
I didn't have any luck at all. I thought this is
You,
gonna be great.
you didn't have a subject walk through with the turquoise headscarf, so
No,
that's
I did not. They're just like walking up in front of a pyramid type of thing too. But yeah, that's where again when you get to ideally I like to shoot in overcast days in cities. But when you do have the bright sunlight, there are the shadows, and that's man, that's a good zero. And there they are. Those are those shadows. Those
And the other thing,
shadows.
if you're in a downtown area, the shadows and the reflections of windows on buildings,
Yes.
like light and shadow stuff, it gets really, really fun. This is a great shot.
Yeah, when there's no sun, you cannot shoot this.
Yep.
And there's another fashion photographer, if I can get this one up, who he was friends with. They were friends. Irving Penn with Richard Avedon. You probably recognize this photo.
Oh, yeah.
This is very much like with the angles of the woman when the roller skates in Paris with the he's probably the most famous fashion photographer of that time.
Hmm.
Second, Richard Avedon would be the second most. And Richard Avedon had you ever see the famous posters of the Beatles with the psychedelic colors? I'm sure. Yeah, I think it was on Life magazine. With that, which you use, just played around in a dark room to get those images. But who would be your favorite photographer, favorite interesting photographer, as opposed to the Ansel Adams or
Oh gosh, that's a hard question.
I like the photographs of Saul Leiter, but I
Yeah.
can say it's my favorite.
Yeah, and it just really depends. I mean, yeah, Saul Leiter is I love the work that I've seen. I've often liked going back, like I like Walker Evans' work. Just it kind of depends. Like sometimes it's the subject that really draws me in and how people have treated that. Um, I've talked about Fred Herzog before, and part of that is because he's local here. I've been getting to know Greg Girard's work a lot, and he's also a local photographer in Vancouver who photographed all over, principally in Asia. And he did this beautiful work with an author around the city of Kowloon. It's just a visual feast, and in part because of just how crazy Kowloon was. But so those are all people I find myself inspired by. Yeah. So
So there's Fred Herzog right there.
yeah.
Great use of color there. I mean, we've got the narrative of the time period, but you also have the narrative of it's like it's a thing. I think part of the narrative discussion we had where they were talking about a picture is supposed to tell a story. So you could bring a story into this, but what would that be? I mean, with the man seems like he's reading, but it almost looks like he's falling asleep, and the woman is like waiting for she's got an ice cream cone.
ice cream. Yes.
Well, one of the things that he really excelled at, he would just walk through various neighborhoods, and he would shoot into a store window, or he would shoot through a store window out into the street. And going back to your earlier comment about with Eggleston's work, showing, okay, well, here's what suburbia in 1960 something looked like here with the kind of objects and such. So he captures these street scenes that kind of give you this representation of what it was like. And some of his stuff is really like, it's interesting being here because he's showing pictures from, let's say, 1950s, 60s Vancouver. And it almost seems like another world in terms of like the development is completely different now. The types of houses are different. You see, there's one famous picture of him. He's got a bunch of teenagers. It looks like it's like the 20s, but it's like in the 40s or 50s, and they're in a Rodster and they're going out for the night. Yeah, yeah. So I was talking about the light on
Yeah.
Hastings. So that's like, I know that the time of year that's going to be taken in the summertime, and that's right around sunset, and you've got these long things of light coming down the corridor of the east-west streets in Vancouver in that neighborhood. So, again, this is the kind of stuff that he would do. So for me, it's lovely because that's the city I live in. So when I'm walking around, I'm trying to look for opportunities to see like that more than anything else.
It's a beautiful shadow, eh?
Yeah. A big good example of frame the shot and wait. I bet he did.
Yeah.
He says, wow, look at that
Yeah.
reflection on the street there coming from the window.
So again, I think, it's wonderful when there are photographers who have spent their whole life shooting in a particular city, and you kind of see the way in which they kind of create images over a span of time, and what that tells you about not just the city itself, but their life in it. And I find if you start to look into that with some photographers, it just adds an additional value.
Yeah, but for me, it's not so working here. I'm living in a small town, and yeah, sometimes I make pictures here, but it's not so easy.
I think Joel Megerwitz is another.
Oh, yeah. Joe Meyerowitz, yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So, again, and you can look at this and you can kind of see him in an image pretty quickly. And he shot, cities so well, and
Yeah.
talked a fair bit about it too. So I've read a bit of his stuff.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think that he is particularly, um, there we go. I'm going to get this picture up. This is one of my absolute most favorite
Oh, yeah,
photographs.
Yeah, yeah, you showed that.
yeah, that's what I was talking about. Yeah.
There's so many things going on here.
He's
You
walking
posted that into the forum a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. This is like, I mean, you got this, it's all balanced, it's tilted.
Yeah.
F8 and B there.
Yeah, and if you first glance, it's like, no, that's a mistake. This is like too much of a snapshot. But that's you start to see the rhythm of the people's faces pointed this way and that.
Yeah.
And then the man falling down, and you have the angle of the hand truck.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, there's just great rhythm there.
And it's all moving. It's in a moment. Normally you don't see that moment because it's moving. It stopped the time.
Well, and thinking about capturing something like that, it's not like he would have waited for anything. He took the shot. He took this exposure and maybe a couple on either sides of it, and this is the one he presents. But like he had to have an eye to see what was in front of him and take the picture.
I think he was waiting there because you can see everything is sharp. Yeah? You can see the letters on the girl's handbag. You can see the iron is totally sharp, and even the back is sharp. No, after the cars.
But I just expect he had his camera set to he had a deep well in focus. So he might have needed to focus. He might not have, or he was already kind of pre-focused, probably 6 feet in front of him.
Yeah, I think it had to be a lot of luck involved there, but he had to be right that he just had a feeling for that. I don't think I wouldn't have been able to get this.
And you can all make arrows. Everybody's looking to that man on the floor.
I'm also want to find another one of his here. I keep going to this website.
Another one that was inspiring for me is Alex Webb
Alex Webb.
with his colors.
Mm. Or another one just thought of Andrew Parr because of his humor.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, Alex. Yeah, I remember this. Get this a shot. Oh,
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that are colors, huh?
and I think there are some other shots of. Yeah, that one there. I always love this one.
Yeah, with the book in the front. That's great.
Mhm. I mean, how do you get a color? How do you get a color combination like that? Holy cow!
Well, it's shot at night for one. That's one of the like in Greg Girard's photographs. He'd be out at night with a tripod, and you get all these kind of neon and other kinds of lit, unnaturally lit street scenes. But yeah, th this guy is really good on light and shadows and color.
And editing, huh?
Yeah.
He can edit very well the colors.
But like the one above that you showed that I mentioned is at night. I mean, it is interesting how people sometimes, I've done this before where I reset the white balance to what what I think it should be, when in fact I should just leave it because I'm losing all of the mood and the atmosphere by zeroing out the white balance from the light that was captured
Mhm.
or neutralizing it.
Here's another Joel Meyerowitz Sierra shot.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
And it might be Joel Meyerowitz, the interview I read about, and I frequently bring this up when he said, where are the masterpieces? When
Yeah.
people will argue about, well, this photo is great, I mean, there's nothing wrong with this photo for whatever reason it would be. And he will say, well, where are examples like that as masterpieces? I mean, and that's when we start to get into a situation where what do you want to do with your own art? Do you want to compare it to others? And do you want it to fit in with other people's work as a masterpiece?
You need to have your own style, they say, yeah.
You do. But do you want, are you just going to be an individual that's alone, is not connected to anything else, the singularity per se?
Mhm.
Or do you want to be part of the world of photographic art and
Mhm.
be even accepted in that world? So, I mean, what would be your goals? Do you want to get a Pulitzer Prize for a photograph, or do you just want to get better at your photography, or do you care about what other people think about it? I mean, all things, that's totally, any of them are valid goals. But if you're going to continually do things like, I will always have way too many elements that compete against one another in a photograph because that's my style, how long will you be able to last like that? I mean, it's hard for me not to think that they're just being lazy. I try to be kinder with that kind of criticism. But if somebody's continually posting photos that have the same old, too many distracting elements, so you don't need to pay attention to those distracting elements. It's the subject it's important. You need to look beyond that. Like the viewers has the duty to ignore the distracting elements. I totally disagree with that. But this person though, on the other hand, has a good reason for why they do it like that. Just because my opinion, that doesn't mean I'm correct. So what would be your thoughts on something like that?
It's difficult.
I mean, how do you feel about where do you want your photography to be placed in the world?
No, I cannot say give an answer to that.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I don't take my photography maybe so seriously as an output. It's a lot more of a process to me in terms of I just take a lot of pleasure in um, going out in the world with an intention to bring back something that is pleasing to me. And then if I get interested or maybe momentarily distracted by a certain kind of um, image I want to shoot, then I have to go through a bit of a process to figure out how to do that. So I do want the images that I shoot to please me first and foremost. If I'm shooting images for other people, and so I'm giving some pictures to some friends, then I'm striving to do something I think will work for that context. But I love the fact that I'm more kind of engaged in developing the things that catch my attention and that I see in the world. So the development of visual literacy, the maybe modicum of increasing control over getting the results I wanted, rather than being surprised when something worked out, and having a little bit more competence with the gear and the strategy for how I set myself up for taking a picture. All of those things are part of what I find very important in terms of my own motivation. And then, I was telling you right at the start, Teddy, like, being in a situation where I have a camera with me, I'm ready, and when I see something, I can capture it. So, last night I was taking pictures of my friend Guy, the guy in the viaduct, in a really interesting alley, and I was there with my camera. I got the shot, and or several shots, and they're really good shots. So now I can give that to him, and I feel good about having been in the right circumstance, ready to take a shot like that. So those are the things that that matters a lot more to me than the reception of my work, though I do prefer if my pictures look a little bit different, and I'm okay with that sometimes because maybe they are too busy. I kind of like a lot of detail, so that or I like a lot of blur, so I'm okay with both of those things. Okay, can I screen share? I'll show you
Oh,
the
sure,
shot
of
I was
course.
talking about
If I can stop sharing.
that
Let's see here. Come on, I'm not getting my Zoom window.
Oh, okay, I see it now. Yeah, you have to allow sharing, and I'll share a shot.
Okay, stop share. I found it.
Okay, you do not have it turned on for other people. You are
I do.
controlling the whole show. So if you go down to share, you should be able to extend it to others
If
can
that, I
share.
just said multiple partners can share
Yep. Okay,
simultaneously.
that'll work now.
Okay.
All right, so I just have to get the right image up because it's not showing me which images is going to come up. Let's try, well, why do I have multiple ones here? I've got like 4 or 5 different images. Just 1 second, folks. No, I don't want that.
Generally, you have more than one screen up?
Yeah, so I've got 2 screens going, but Lightroom is only occupying one, so just give me a second here. I'll do it differently. I'll just do desktop. Oh, desktop 1. Well, no, I'm going to try better. Let's try that. Oh, that's why. I hadn't set it to allow it to share.
Fussy. I'm trying to
Oh,
turn that stuff.
okay, let's see if it does it now. And if it doesn't, oh, there we go. Yeah.
There, it's coming, I think. There it is.
Can you see it?
Yes. So this is you took this photo.
Yeah, last night.
Oh,
in an
Nice.
alley while we were in between sets in this uh, in this a boxing club that's down. So this is in a very sketchy alley. Graffiti everywhere. Some people who are in not good situations in their lives just down the way. You go down the stairs and there's a boxing gym that some nights is a place where they play music. So again, so I'm motivated to carry a camera with me, so I've got it when I mean I could do this on an iPhone, I suppose, but I like the
Mhm.
shot.
yeah, it's a
Yeah.
great shot.
The man is a bit like the drawing in the back, eh?
Yeah.
Buried. And I think this is 28 millimeter.
28 millimeter. Yeah.
Yeah, because his leg is a bit, yeah,
Yeah, so
free.
a bit of distortion because of that. And, again, I'm not square. So I've got, and, I started to play with the geometry, but then parts of it just didn't work the same. So there are problems when you're just shooting on the street, no questions about it. But yeah,
Well, the tones are beautiful.
Yeah.
yeah, it comes together.
What kind of light you had?
This is in the evening. So this is kind of, and I'm shooting at 5,000 ISO. So it's already dark.
Yeah,
So, I was, well,
I
when
think
it
it's
went
good.
25, I had it set for what I was shooting inside at. So I hadn't reset for here, but yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
So anyways, I haven't posted this to Flickr yet, but going back to your question around, like I like when my photos look like this. I like if I take a picture when I see something like this kind of come together. That's when I'm happiest about having a camera with me.
Yeah, but I was thinking, when you want to have a prize, then you first need to start with projects. Huh?
Mhm.
And when you have projects, you need to publish and you need to make an exposition or something. Then you can start with having a prize, not when you leave it on weekly, I think nobody will give you a prize. Huh?
Well, you two said you like it, so I feel gratified. That's enough of a prize for me to start with.
Yeah.
But it is interesting because we have some folks who are putting their work forward for juried critique and awards and things like that. And I think that can be highly motivating for people to refine their approach to get serious about their work.
Actually, yesterday I started with Chat GPT. I don't know if you know that, but now you can ask for what they think about your photo as well.
Yeah.
And I have done that, and it's remarkable what they say. That yeah, I don't follow everything what they say, but well, they have the machine have opinions about your photo, and then you're going to think what you can do. Uh, for example, they say, well, uh, your composition is a bit centralized. Can you do something like that? Or this is actually a movement, so would you use black and white in this photo? Or things you don't think of, you're going to do.
Well,
Hmm.
you can get that by posting stuff on the weekly. However, the Chat GPT part would be anonymous. So you can have Chat GPT evaluate your photo 5 different ways, and then you fine tune it before you put it in the weekly.
Yeah,
Well, and then the other interesting aspect that it has implications as we go, but the response you get from ChatGPT is from a language model that's been trained on all manner of content, including people who have been critiquing pictures, and the fact that it's kind of moving this direction where it can offer advice. It might have a very big and broad frame of reference in terms of materials that it's kind of think, or it doesn't think, the kind of predictive pattern that it comes back with in terms of what it offers. And I think that in even a little bit of use, anytime you're getting feedback from
yeah.
uh, on your image, that can help you to think about it differently because another set of
Yeah.
eyes, in this case,
He
robot eyes.
never gets tired of you, eh? So you can
Exactly.
ask 3 times again, and well, and what is good about it is well, they ask you, what's your intention with the photo, eh?
Yeah.
So when you have the intention to make art, it's different than when you have the intention to make or publish or
Mhm.
so if you give answers to that, it's keeps you thinking of what you want.
Wasn't there a comment in the chatter box about like East Coast or West Coast critique of my picture? In terms of like a little bit fluffier and a little bit harder edged.
Yeah, I've heard that before. Yeah. Yeah, I just want my goal is to just become a better photographer.
Mhm.
And you know what? I think it's a blast to do that. So it's fun. So that's what I want to do. I mean, I posted an image of a macro panorama, and I've been struggling with macro panoramas. So, but I think I'm finally getting it figured out. So that was a lot of fun to do that. Even though I did 17, I thought were successful macro panoramas. Once I finally put it together, they weren't successful. But now it worked. So
Mm.
that process is very satisfying.
Exercising.
Yeah. It's like playing a musical instrument. You just practice it until all of a sudden, oh yeah, I'm getting those tones right now. I can do this now that I couldn't do that before.
Yeah. If you've done it a lot of times, then well, it's the afterwards it's easy, but you have to
Yeah.
do the process.
And I've been talking a bit about seeing a lot of music recently, and a lot of the shows I'm seeing are young musicians who are playing in like, multiple projects and such. And what I really appreciate is just the kind of evidence of the repertoire these folks have. So they can move through different genres of music and different kinds of configurations of groups from trios to, 13-piece bands. And you begin to realize that, and I think it's similar with photography, like, people have the skill to apply themselves with a growing set of ability and have the repertoire in terms of their approach to do something that's interesting or something they want. So I think it's a wonderful challenge to take on different kinds of photography that you haven't tried before, get better at it, figure out what that looks like, kind of then bring it into when it matters for the kinds of things that you want to take pictures of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like to help. I like, I mean, want to be able to help people get better at being a photographer. Not so much as saying, here's how you know how to have your style, but here's how you can arrive at better images in
Mhm.
general
Hmm.
on a technical aspect, because I'm a technician. So
Well,
there is definitely a technical aspect to photography that can't be ignored.
yeah, and I
Oh,
and I'm more appreciative when people talk about, how could this be better than whether or not they like an image, because I think it's like that kind of actually graciousness to offer people things to help them to get better, to see things that they maybe aren't seeing in their work. That's a true benefit of this kind of situation.
mm.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm going to try to figure out how to get more people to come in. I don't think we need too many more people to show up for these meetings, but they're a lot of fun.
Yeah, but the hours are more going more quickly than in the beginning. I don't know.
We're
Yeah,
getting used to one another.
yeah,
They need to know one another. But this was an interesting one today because we actually spent the whole day, you just popped up different photos, including some of ours. And we just talked about photos all day, and a few questions interspersed. So that
Yeah,
was,
yeah, yeah,
was kind of
yeah,
fun.
yeah.
yeah. If you have some interesting famous photographs that you really like, keep those, get a good copy of those so we can share them next time
Yeah.
around. We don't have to always do that same thing, but that could be
Oh,
an
no, no,
interesting
but
thing to pull up.
yeah.
So we're already 5 minutes after 3. So I am going to get off of here, you guys, and
All right.
pretty sure I'm going to be able to do this next week too. I don't think I have anything until September. So
I
Okay.
will be off camping next week, so I won't be here, but I'm going to be along the side of my campsite's right on the side of Howe Sound, a beautiful spot.
oh yeah,
It'll be by the ocean for a week, so be very nice.
Okay.
I'll look forward to your photos.
Yes, there will be some.
All right, all
All
right,
right.
guys.
Have a good
See you
weekend.
later.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.